what we recognized is that if we can put our community partners and their ideas at the heart of our refresh strategy, we're really going to accelerate the impact, right? It's not about us. We have certain things we think are important that we want to accomplish in society, but we actually don't have the best ideas on the ground about how to make that happen. It's our partners that have the best ideas about how to make that happen.
You're listening to Let's Imagine, an Imagine Canada podcast for everyone interested in social issues and the nonprofit sector. I'm your host, Bruce MacDonald. At Imagine Canada, we believe that by leveraging our national vantage point, building cross-sector relationships, and sharing and developing our knowledge base, we can advance social, economic, and environmental justice through our collective action. Join us as we dive deep into conversations that have big implications for the nonprofit and charitable sector here in Canada. A special thank you to our supporting partner, Carter's Professional Corporation. Together, let's imagine a stronger future. This week on Let's Imagine, we're thrilled to welcome Andrea Barrack, Executive Senior Vice President, Sustainability and Impact at RBC, as well as Claudia Hepburn, CEO of Windmill Microlending. I'm sure most of you know RBC, but if you're not familiar with Windmill, it's a charity that provides affordable loans to help skilled immigrants and refugees leverage their talents and contribute to the Canadian workforce. To kick off this episode, we're going to discuss how corporate social responsibility and community investment practices have evolved over the years, and how companies have adapted based on the needs and feedback of their nonprofit partners. We're also going to discuss RBC's recently announced partnership with Windmill. Andrea and Claudia, thank you so much for being here and welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So we're going to kick off with a little bit of data to frame the conversation. Last fall, Imagine Canada released the study, Bridging Perspectives, Nonprofit Views of Corporate Social Impact in Canada. This report compiles the perspectives and expectations of over 900 nonprofit organizations, highlighting barriers to more effective partnerships with companies and suggesting solutions. While nonprofit respondents indicated that they would like corporate partners to commit more dollars, when it comes to corporate partnerships, nonprofits value strong relationships with individuals. That came in at 81%, and long-term corporate relationships at 79%, significantly more than the total amount of financial support provided, which came in at 49%. So Andrea, we're going to kick off with you. Based on your experience at RBC and working with nonprofits, what are your thoughts on this finding? Was it a surprise?
So no, I would say, but a longer answer would be, I think at RBC, we really understand that impactful partnerships are built on shared values, trust, deep relationships, not just financial contributions. And so I think the findings that you stated and the data you stated actually really aligns well with feedback that we've heard from our partners as well over the years. And I would summarize that by saying it's not really just about the what, it's also about the how, right? And our partners value having a dedicated relationship manager that spends time to understand the mission of the organization so they can be thoughtful about how RBC can help them to achieve that. We've heard feedback that, a lot of charities are really pushed in delivering on their mission. They don't have time for a lot of bureaucracy and paperwork. And so how do we sort of help that? Strong relationships kind of allow us to minimize the amount of effort organizations need to put forth to secure support. And like when we designed our own, process, we tried to take that in and take a thoughtful approach saying, how do we improve the user experience then? And included things like even engaging with Indigenous philanthropy advisors to help review our application process to say, is it inclusive? Is it accessible? So yes, financial is contributions important. We know that actually helps us to, start to have the conversation. But the key is really the strength of our relationships and the shared commitments we have together. It's this idea of reciprocity. We both need each other. And I would say on our team, we do value certainly people who come up through the bank, but we've really been quite deliberate in making sure that when we bring new people onto the team, that they do have community experience so that we have that on the ground skill set and knowledge to engage authentically with the sector.
That's great. And it's so interesting. And we're going to talk a little bit about RBC's approach in a couple of minutes. But Claudia, I want to get your take on this particular finding around the strength of relationship being so important, even more so than financial contributions. So curious to know your thoughts on these findings from a nonprofit perspective.
Yeah, it's a fascinating finding. I mean, on one hand, I'm surprised when anything trumps, size of donation, because, in this particularly challenging environment for, where there's so much more need in the sector than there are donations to go around, the size of a gift, super important. And also the length of time commitment that a gift makes. So it doesn't surprise me that that is even more important. But, everything that Andrea says about the importance of a relationship is so true. I'm reminded of a book I read a couple of decades ago called The Speed of Trust. And when you have, trusted relationship partners that last for a long time, it just makes everything so much better and so much easier. And that creates its own set of values for a nonprofit partner. So RBC has been Windmill's bank for the better part of 2 decades. RBC has been funding Windmill for nearly 2 decades. We've had a line of credit with RBC that has allowed us to do more loans and have more peace of mind with the loans that we're doing, because we know they're going to be there for us. And we have great relationships with everybody on Andrea's team. And we also at Windmill, we have a board member who is an executive at RBC. And so all those different relationships create different strategic value for the organization and opportunities for more relationship building within the bank and outside the bank. So all those things make it very impactful.
And that's amazing. So, Andrea, we're going to come to you actually for a few questions and then back to Claudia for a few. In this study, RBC stands out as being a strong nonprofit sector partner. It was named by the nonprofit professionals as one of the companies having significantly impacted the organization's ability to achieve their mission. So from your perspective, Andrea, what do you think makes RBC unique in its approach in supporting nonprofits and fostering meaningful relationships?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And obviously, we were really pleased to see that because we care deeply about how our partners perceive us. RBC has a long history of community investment. We actually, fun fact, we gave our first community donation in 1891. And so I would say purpose and giving back to communities is really the heart of the organization. It's so embedded in our culture. We do it everywhere that we operate, so 29 countries around the globe. And I think it's actually a real kind of mechanism that we use to just engage our employees and recruit and retain talent. Our investments today are enabled by a network of about 3,000 community investment partners. So we have a lot of relationships that are out there. And I think that's that belief that, we exist in communities. We have an obligation to contribute to, building healthy, vibrant communities and driving change. And so that's why, we've, allocated the 1% net income before tax in all of our core markets. And that's going to actually enable us to hit our target of $2 billion in community investments by 2025. I would also say, though, it's about the specifics, like things that really matter on the ground, because you can talk about, just sort of the big strategies, but it's about the specifics. So I talked about our community investment approach, trying to make it easier, but we also wanted to be flexible, adaptable, recognizing, the world is moving at a pace that is just accelerated from anything we've seen before. And so we need to be able to respond to changing community needs over time and attune to the feedback from the sector, right? That actually corporate funders aren't always good at listening to what communities partners really needed. And sometimes and I've been in those shoes where I had to hear hard feedback that people feel like we're being too prescriptive, that, we've made things too complex and too challenging. And so we took that to heart, right? How are we going to then take that feedback, own it, and create a new approach that actually incorporates the feedback that we heard? And I think at the end of the day, if I would sort of summarize what it's about, for us, what we recognize is that if we can put our community partners and their ideas at the heart of our refresh strategy, we're really going to accelerate the impact, right? It's not about us. We have certain things we think are important that we want to accomplish in society, but we actually don't have the best ideas on the ground about how to make that happen. It's our partners that have the best ideas about how to make that happen. Our role is to listen and to enable and to support and to tell stories about it and to engage our people in it. And so I think that's sort of like how we're looking at it over time. And I think I'm hoping that's one of the things that resonates to others as well.
It does sound like significant ingredients in the secret sauce. I have to say, I'd love to know what impact measurement looked like in 1891.
Yeah. I don't even know if that was a big check then. You have the big, huge, like checks. Like, do we do that? I don't know. Like looking up in the archives.
Exactly. So I'm going to stay with you for a couple more questions. So in addition to repeat and consistent funding, nonprofits stated the value of non-cash support as one of the reasons for corporate partnerships that had significant impact on their missions. Are there any examples of such support that RBC has offered to nonprofits of this non-cash area?
Yeah. And, I think one of the things when we thought about our new strategy, what we wanted to do is we thought, how do we bring all of the assets of RBC to this partnership? So yes, it is about the donation for sure, but how do we bring our employees? How do we, bring our products and services? Claudia talked about like banking services. We have a big not-for-profit practice. Like, how do we bring some of those things? Board leadership. We have lots of folks that do skills-based volunteering. And if I use Windmill as an example, we're so excited about this because RBC employees can volunteer as mentors to share their experience and support Windmill clients in things like resume writing, interview preparation, career development, workshops that are held on, financial literacy for newcomers, mentorship, coaching. We have 100,000 people around the globe, and we have a huge skill set that we have to offer. We have like huge digital skill set, marketing, HR, finance. And so we really try to drive that through skills-based volunteer programs to say, we've got incredible talent. What do community partners need and might not have the resources to address? And how do we make that happen? I think the other thing that I'll sort of mention that I think is sort of neat that we've been doing in the last couple of years that's been really well received is finding opportunities to bring the sector together to convene and actually just network with each other on a topic. Because, when people are really stretched and busy on their own mission, sometimes it's hard to kind of lift your head up and sort of, see who else is out there and sort of what's doing. So I think that convening, it was so well received. We're actually launching part of a new sector capacity approach, recognizing, listen, we've got all kinds of, resources. We've been working on sort of skills for a long time. How do we help, whether it's newcomers, which we'll talk about with Windmill, or youth, which we did through Future Launch for many years. But we kind of turned our minds to thinking, well, wait a second. The not-for-profit sector actually also has a number of areas of skills and capacity development that they need in order to fulfill their mission. So how can we be there for that as well?
And that's a super exciting area because it's interesting in our work. I mean, we certainly hear from organizations that often sometimes they feel quite isolated in terms of the work that they're doing. And in many cases realize, but don't have the time or the energy to convene and get together. And that's where that sort of bringing minds together to help hear what others are doing is a really valuable contribution. One of the other findings of the report was that in general, nonprofits said they had limited confidence in the corporate sector's ability to positively impact communities. So there's lots of really positive stuff, but there was this one questioning the corporate sector's ability to impact communities. So as you're thinking about the role that companies play, what do you think that the private sector or corporate Canada can do to build confidence and change that perception?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it also reflects just that broader societal trend that we're seeing about declining trust in institutions overall. And so we're certainly kind of swept up in that. So I just want to acknowledge that. The first thing I would say is to be authentic and not trying to pretend that you're something you're not. So we're very clear. We are trying to align our community investments and that work with our broader organizational values, our culture, and our business strategy. Because we actually believe that we're going to be more successful. And that's what we are trying to do. So we're just very upfront about that. And, we've seen rising polarization in some organizations that are starting to retreat from their commitments and their goals and sometimes their funding. And I think that's because they haven't aligned to their business strategy and what they're trying to do. It was something that happened sort of on the side, maybe as a marketing thing. So when, things got tight, then they sort of pulled back. Whereas for us, it's embedded into our overall strategy. And that actually helps us to continue to be able to push forward. We actually recently kind of took a step back, kind of 2023, and reevaluated, what are those societal issues that are impacting our business today and in the future? And how could RBC have a positive impact on that? And part of our business, it's like, it is about, certainly our shareholder value, but it's also about like what's impacting our employees, what's impacting our communities. That like we did take that full stakeholder approach and kind of came up with a new strategy for that. My thinking is that by doing that and being upfront about it, we told our community partners, we toured, all of our major markets where we were, and we said, here's what the bank needs to do, and here's how it impacts what we're going to do in community. We're just like super upfront about it. And here's how you can help us. And we think you can. I actually think that honesty helps to build the trust. We're not pretending that it's something different. And having done this in corporations for a little bit, I think not only does it add to authenticity, it actually helps us access more enterprise resources, right? Because it is not something that's extra and additional. It is something. Our purpose, by the way, is helping clients thrive and communities prosper. And that and word is so important to me. It's not or. It's not like one or the other. Like, I do believe that we can do both things at once. The more our business is successful, the more we're able to help our communities. And so it's like a perfect kind of circle to me. And so I think that's what we're doing anyway, and how we're thinking about building trust is just that authenticity. I think the second thing, which we talked about briefly, is that listening to community partners and adapting, right? Like we have to be humble. We don't have all the answers. We don't show up as that. Like, I hope that, our teams, when they come, like that they are seen as really wanting to learn and listen how we can do better, and being open to that feedback and being flexible. And then the last thing I think that is important is just transparency and accountability, right? Like we sort of said we are going to be accountable. And, part of it, Bruce, is, like we help fund reports that we may not show up well in. We will be doing this year for the first time third-party grantee perception survey, because we want to actually really learn what are we doing well and what can we do better. And like, we'll report it back and say, this is sort of what we're going to do. So I think that transparency also helps build trust.
Yeah, these are some great points. And it's just, if I can offer an observation as someone who's been, in the sector for a long time working with companies, I think your point around integration to strategy is so important. My observation is that those companies who have it really deeply embedded in the fabric of the company, because it's part of their business strategy, often create the longest lasting, the less vulnerable, and the most focused support, because there's clarity. And to your point, it brings in the full enterprise, not just one group that is sort of thought of as a nice thing, but rather this is integrated to full-on business strategy. So we're going to switch gears a little bit, and now we're going to talk a little bit more from the nonprofit side. So Claudia, we're coming to you on this. But I think, first of all, folks might not know an awful lot about Windmill Microlending. And we know that there was a wonderful announcement between RBC and Windmill Microlending. So before we talk too much more about that, Claudia, can you tell us a bit more about your organization and its work?
Absolutely. Windmill is a national charity that offers affordable career loans and support services to skilled immigrants and refugees. Canadian prosperity depends on our ability to utilize the skills that highly educated immigrants bring with them to Canada. But unfortunately, so often newcomers lack access to affordable credit, and the high cost of relicensing in Canada too often prevents them from working in their fields again. This means that too many internationally trained physicians and engineers are driving Ubers, and too many nurses aren't using their skills to help patients. So what Windmill does is we provide affordable loans of up to $15,000, along with financial literacy training, mentorship, career planning resources, and other kinds of resources to help newcomers overcome these hurdles. And since 2005, we've supported the career success of nearly 14,000 newcomers, half of whom are healthcare professionals, including doctors, nurses, and pharmacists.
That's amazing work. And I know personally, as I've been trying to upgrade and keep my French skills high over the years, I've taken different classes, and I've been astounded and dismayed in a way at the number of tutors that I had who were coming from French-speaking nations, who were doctors or surgeons or lawyers, but they themselves were facing barriers to get credentials to practice their trained profession here in Canada. So it's such vital work that you're doing.
Thank you.
So the let's zero in a little bit now. The partnership indicated that RBC's $5 million donation is the largest corporate donation Windmill has received in support of healthcare workers. Can you tell us how this partnership came to be and what its goals are, what you hope to achieve with it?
Absolutely. So this partnership is the result of a very long-standing relationship with RBC, as I've already mentioned. We've been working together since 2006 in various different capacities. And over the years, we've developed a shared understanding of the urgent need to integrate internationally trained healthcare professionals into the Canadian workforce. The pandemic and growing shortages in primary care have only heightened that urgency of the issue, and I think is part of what's probably brought it to the forefront for RBC. And we're just so thrilled by the really transformative way that RBC has decided to address this by making a $5 million donation over the next 5 years that will enable us to support 850 internationally trained physicians. Now, donations to loan capital at Windmill are especially powerful because for every $1 donated unlocks $2 from our community bond investment program. So this means that a $5 million donation to loan capital actually allows us to lend $15 million to newcomers. And since the average loan is about $12,000 for a newcomer physician, and we can recycle that money, and it takes about 5 years for that funds to be repaid. That means that we're going to be recycling that $15 million every 5 years. And our average physician more than triples his or her income as a result of that loan and helps countless patients, obviously. But that's not all because RBC's funding is not only providing us with loan capital, but also helping us with the wraparound support services that Windmill provides. Andrea has mentioned the mentorship that RBC employees are going to be providing to our clients in terms of the skills that she mentioned. But we're also providing them with coaching, with financial literacy training, with digital career resources and a job board. So there's just so much that's going into this.
Yeah, this is just terrific. And you think about the need in Canada, having 850 trained healthcare professionals move into the system at a time when communities are really desperate for trained professionals in those areas. That's just so wonderful. See, you've talked and mentioned about how the partnership will propel forward the mission. Really invite you now to think about the partnership. And from your perspective, were there elements or ingredients, kind of going back to Andrea's secret sauce in terms of the way RBC is approaching things? From your perspective, what do you think made the partnership with RBC unique?
So the most obvious one is obviously the size of the partnership. It's just remarkable to have any one supporter help 850 clients and 850 such high value newcomers to Canada to allow them to become physicians. So that's just something that shouldn't be glossed over. But it's our relationship with RBC is also remarkable for the depth of the relationships between the teams and between different levels of RBC employees from the very top of the organization through to all different levels and in different places in Canada for supporting us. It's really a deep, thoughtful, strategic partnership that's the best example that I can think of a private sector corporation partnering with a civil society organization and working together to strengthen the fabric of Canada.
That's so wonderful to hear. And I think, part of the purpose of this particular episode is to showcase and understand what are some of those elements that make these kinds of relationships work. And not all of them are around for 20 years, which is amazing in and of itself. But I think there's been so many important insights for both those who are from the corporate side who might be listening and for those from the nonprofit side to be able to be contemplating and thinking about and then maybe integrating into their work. So we always end our interviews with the same question. And so, Andrea, I'm going to come back to you on this one first. Given everything that's going on in the world right now, what brings you hope?
I love my job at RBC that I get to kind of contribute in the way that we do. But, I did come in my early days from the not-for-profit world. And so I do see and still actually get energy from engaging with our not-for-profit partners who really just do incredible things with not a lot. And so the resiliency, the creativity, the energy from our not-for-profit partners, just watching how they double down on this commitment that we have about helping communities prosper kind of gives me hope. There's so many complexities in the world. There's so many external pressures that are reaching. And their optimism that we can still solution and find ways to step through the like increasing number of problems that we seem to have so that we can have lasting impact actually is just, I think that what's makes everything worthwhile gives me hope.
That's wonderful. And Claudia, same question to you. Given everything that's going on in the world right now, what brings you hope?
It's such a great question to end on, Bruce. Thank you for that, and thank you, Andrea, for that lovely answer. So I'd answer it sort of in a general way. Windmill clients give me hope because when we hear their stories and we hear about the challenges that they've overcome and the resilience that they've had to overcome their hurdles with just a little bit of a helping hand from organizations like Windmill, that gives me hope. And then at the same time, if I can just bring in a little personal story. I think all of us, when we work together with partners and do our jobs each day, we put things out there in the hope that it is going to make the world a better place and that good things come around. And, it was a very special moment for me earlier this spring when my father, who's in palliative care in his late 90s, was assigned a palliative care nurse. And my mom started talking to him about his journey from the palliative care nurse's journey and where he'd come from and how quickly he'd got reaccredited in Canada. And she said, "How is that possible that you got reaccredited so fast?" And he said, "Well, I got support from an organization." And my mom said, "Not from Windmill." And so it was obviously gratifying for my family to hear that we were being helped as a result of a client getting funded by Windmill. And so it's my hope that everybody listening to this podcast gets treated by a doctor down the road someday, with or without knowing it, because of the support that RBC has given.
Thank you so much for that. Claudia, Andrea, we know that you are both busy changing the world, and we so much value and appreciate the fact that you have taken time from your busy schedules to join us here on Let's Imagine. Thanks to both of you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you. It's been great.
Thanks for listening to the Let's Imagine podcast. For full show notes and to subscribe to our newsletter so you never miss an episode, please visit our website, www.imaginecanada.ca. Also, if you really like this episode, we invite you to leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to this podcast, as this helps other people discover us and engage in these conversations. And again, thanks to our sponsor, Carter's Professional Corporation, for supporting our podcast.